Welcome to the Turbo Party. We're going to have a special guest later, I guess. So this is really for, I guess I'll start by saying this is really for entertainment. We're just going to do some simple measurements and just kind of see what is behind the Audi curtain. 2014 Audi A4, 220 horsepower. I think it's like, I don't know, maybe 240 foot-pounds of torque. 2014 Audi A8. I think that's like 425 horsepower. So that would kind of make sense, because if this is roughly 200 horsepower, two of these, would maybe make one of those. We'll see. We'll get into it. Right here, 2016 Audi RS7 Plus. This is a 600 horsepower. What is it, like 550 foot-pounds of torque? And this right here is a Gen2 RS7. And this one, I think these cars make, what is it, like, I don't know, 600 and like 590 foot-pounds of torque. And I think they just basically 600. So from smallest to biggest. So on the A4, really, we're going to pull the cover off here and just kind of get into it. Bring the A4 into center stage here. And when you take a look at what we have here from the A4, the low horsepower Gen1 4-liter, the higher horsepower Gen 1 4-liter, and then the Gen 2, the one thing you notice right away is that these are billet looking wheels, because these are indicative of the billet material. And then when we turn them around, you can see basically looks like these wheels are separated a bit more on the Gen 1, and then up and making more horsepower. Looks like they added another exhaust wheel. And then as we flip it back around to check out the compressor side, see how big the compressors are on these. Let's start with the A4 here. We're going to get out the handy digital caliper. This is the 220 horsepower A4. Just measuring the bottom of the compressor wheel. I'm not going to do the inducer, exducer, all that. Just, it seems like this is shows up on the wheel as a 52 millimeter on the compressor for the 220 horsepower A4. Now pulling up the low horsepower Gen 2 compressor wheels. Looks like this is a 52 millimeter wheel as well. Same compressor blade style. That's helpful. And looks like they continued the compressor side. Now moving to the higher horsepower Gen 1, where, let's get the caliper on there. Looks like that's a 58 millimeter. So we've got 52, and then this one was the 600 horsepower. So that's and 550 foot-pounds of torque. I mean, this is just, don't get me wrong, there's the exhaust wheel, so we're going to get to that. But the jump here is actually pretty noticeable. 52 millimeter compressor wheel versus a 58 millimeter. And the exhaust sides are the same. I just know that because I've already measured, but you're looking at the same engine. Don't get me wrong, there's different variances, right? So you can see back here when we're looking at it, the inlet you know, the inducer, the top is going to be bigger. But anyway, just in the compressor wheel, because the exhaust wheels on these two are the same. So this is the same on the exhaust wheel. All you're doing on the low horsepower to the high horsepower, sure, there's different inlets, and you know, you're able to run more boost. But just stock to stock, you're looking at 450 versus this is the Performance Plus. This is 600 horsepower and 550 foot-pounds of torque. Yeah, I mean, it's a 150 jump. Obviously, they're running more boost, and again, there's more to it than this. But this compressor wheel is getting you that much jump, 150 horsepower, and probably just as much torque. And then now we go to the Gen 2, which we know the Gen 2s are notorious for making more torque, right? And it seemed like a better boost curve. Okay, well, some of that's going to be exhaust. The more fins you have, you generally can pick up more spool down low, and then as you open up and you allow more air to get by, they don't stall out as much up top. Anyway, let's take a look at what this one is. This one is appreciably 600 horsepower, but this is 600 foot-pounds of torque. That's 50 more foot-pounds of torque stock than you're going to see on, you know, the Performance Plus. And we get the caliper on this one, the RS7 Performance Plus. Let's get this on here. Yeah, I mean, this is right here. If I got my caliper on it in a good spot. Yeah, I mean, this is 60 millimeters just on the compressor. So another 2 millimeters bigger on the compressor. But obviously, we know right now, just going, this is the potential here. You go and you look at the difference, 6 millimeters right here helped us pick up. Again, there's other supportive parts, but just in the compressor alone, obviously you're going to be running more boost, but the facilitation stock for stock, the compressor wheel is, like I said, this one stock, different power levels, all the rest of it, but yeah, that's a big jump. And then this Gen 2 is 2 millimeters bigger than the Gen 1. Now, to continue the story, we're going to flip it around, and we know that these two share the exact same exhaust wheel. Well, okay, so here's the exhaust wheel on the A4, but it is, the way it is built, it is really unique in how the exhaust wheel is. Again, there's a different blade design. I would have been expecting a little bit of a different blade design that is conducive to, you know, spooling more down low, but it seems the way this blade is designed, it looks like they're trying to split and get the best of both worlds. Getting a caliper measurement on this is difficult, because as you can see here in the camera, if it's going to focus on it, the wheel flares out in the middle. So getting that exact measurement at the high point is going to be a bit difficult. I'm going to try my best. And that looks like 48 millimeters. Again, I can't call it 48. Okay, so we've got the, you know, the 200 horsepower. Now we're going to the exhaust side, obviously more exhaust fins, and we're gonna check the exhaust on this. Make sure we got that. Okay, 52 millimeters versus that, which was definitely a lot different. I already know this is the same 52 millimeters, right? But here we go here. What is the story going to be here, right? So we know this has got an extra part of another fan on the wheel. 52. Let's get, so it looks like 53 millimeters. It looks like the way the wheel catches, it looks like they squeezed another millimeter out of the wheel duration. This is a 60 millimeter compressor, and what happens is you go to 62 millimeters on the compressor on the Gen 1s, and you know, these cars are making 800 plus horsepower, so you're going to support a lot on a 60 plus millimeter turbo. And the way this exhaust configuration is really impressive. I do have something that's I don't know, maybe somebody will find this as interesting as I did. So a 60 millimeter wheel was what I thought was pretty much the high end. I thought, okay, that's probably the biggest wheel Audi has put in something, but no, we got a special guest in the house tonight. Something you don't see often. Not a huge horsepower car here. This car only made from the factory, I think they rated it like 600 horsepower, but this exhaust wheel here, this is a Bentley Continental GT. I have to make sure I check on that, but here we go again. This is a very large compressor wheel, and if we go and we grab ourselves a measurement of that, yeah, that's 64 millimeter right there. 64 millimeter. That's a serious wheel. The only thing that struck me as odd when I was comparing the differences in the wheels was they all seem to be 6-blade, but the assumption is that these are billet, and this is not. So I'm assuming the Bentley is not a high boost application. Okay, so I took a minute and stripped down the turbocharger. Just to recap, we've got the Gen 2 600 horsepower billet high boost 60 millimeter wheel. We have the Bentley 6-liter 600 horsepower 64 millimeter compressor wheel, and they are very similar in the compressor wheel design, except for what you'll notice is the billet design here, which means they take a solid piece of aluminum and machine out the wheel, versus this cast wheel right here. Why is a larger wheel not billet? They most likely do not run anywhere near the amount of boost that you're running out of the RS7. When we turn around, the story tends to make more sense when we turn it around. We have the 53 millimeter exhaust wheel, and then you can see the Bentley actually is a 12-blade versus a 10-blade. So we had 9-blade 52, 10-blade 53, and the Bentley, let's toss the caliper on that. Well, that's 54, so that's a 12-blade 54. Keep in mind, all three of these are 600 horsepower. The difference is if you're asking me, we know right away that the Gen 2 4-liter spools a little bit quicker, makes a little bit more torque. You can see that in the exhaust design here, right? And then you can see the Bentley. Now, of course, this is different. This is a W12, so you're going to need to flow way more air to get a 6-liter going. So this, while this is just for fun, it can be a little bit confusing. So if we were to take this out of the equation and we just compare these two, right? Remember, after you get to this size right here, 60 millimeters is pretty big. Sure, we have 58, but the difference between 58 and 60 is pretty serious when you get to this size, right? And you want to go, and why did they go and they make the exhaust wheel a little bit bigger? Man, on average, you want to try to keep your turbine wheel within 10 to 15% of the size of your compressor wheel, right? Real quick to explain what that means. The compressor wheel, you want to have the relationship between the compressor wheel and the exhaust within a certain percentage. If the exhaust wheel is too big or small, that'll affect the output on your compressor wheel, because after all, the exhaust energy comes by the exhaust side, rotates the shaft, and pushes the compressor wheel that then compresses the air, pushes it into the engine. You can put a bigger compressor wheel on, but again, if the compressor wheel is too big and the exhaust wheel is too small, then you're not going to get enough energy past that wheel. It's going to become restrictive. You can put, as you go bigger, you can put more exhaust fins on. And what that does is that allows you to have a bigger wheel area to let the exhaust energy go by. But you have to be careful, because if you have too many fins, then what ends up happening is that too becomes a restriction in the flow. When you go and you look at this KO4 that we were looking at, or I'm sorry, KO3, these are called KO3 Sports, it's got the exact same compressor wheel as the 4-liter, but the exhaust wheel's different. Why is the exhaust wheel different? If you look here, what they're trying to achieve is they made the exhaust wheel smaller, and then they changed this to be a hybrid. So it will still grab a lot of air down low, but then still flow enough upstairs to let enough air go by. Some people would obviously say, well, why don't you go and you have both of them be the same size? Well, we did that before. Some of you might remember this turbo. This is the B5 S4 turbo, right? But 20 years ago, the B5 S4 turbo. But look at the difference in these compressor wheels. This is a 45 millimeter compressor wheel. This is a 48. But then look at the exhaust. This is a multi-blade, and the exhaust and the compressor are the same size, right? But it took, on a 2.7, two of these turbos to have the same output as one of these turbos. So I don't want to get too thick into the weeds on it. I basically thought I would just step out and mention that. Really, this is all just about the 4-liter, half of a 4-liter, and the 4-cylinder. And as we know, the low horsepower Gen 1, the high horsepower Gen 1, and then obviously the current 4-liter. All right, so yeah, that's basically it. I just thought I'd bring out a few turbos and try to, I don't know, make something entertaining out of it. So I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you on the next one.